rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1!
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back to Rebel Force Radio. Great to be with you this week. Great to be back from vacation. Holy cow. I was going to say I'm tanned, rested, and ready. I'm not so tanned. I'm more, I don't know, freshly baked. Got that Irish skin. It doesn't tan. It crisps. But, I had a great time in the North Myrtle Beach area last week. I was sad to be away from, of course, Rebel Force Radio and all of you guys and all of that. But I still managed to snag a couple of Star Wars moments here and there on vacation. We'll talk about it here in just a little bit. But as I say, it's wonderful to be back. Thanks for hanging out with us this week on RFR. We're in the dog days of summer, but fear not, because right around the corner is not one, but two new Star Wars series. Well, not a new series. We've got second season of Bad Batch, which is going to be upon us shortly. And in just a few weeks, we've got the premiere of Andor. So this is all huge. This is a great time to be a Star Wars fan. We're going to have two Star Wars series running simultaneously. It's going to be a heck of a fall going into the holiday season. So I'm pumped. I'm psyched. Like I say, I'm glad to be back. And I know another guy that's glad to be back, and that is, of course, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Yeah, back from vacation, ready, relaxed, recharged, and going to entertain you. That's what we're going to do here this time on Rebel Force Radio. So you were able to sneak some Star Wars into your vacation. I was able to sneak some vacation into my Star Wars.
I know.
When I was out in California.
Different experiences. You're really, I mean, Star Wars was a huge crux of your time out west in California. We had that awesome live show a couple weeks ago from Rancho Obi-Wan, which is so great. So if you haven't watched it or listened to it, please check it out. Steve Sansweet, the legend, along with Ann and Stu, and what a fun time.
And the chickens. But we did have a lot of fun, and it was like being a kid in a candy store and just being able to have access to all of the great items in the world's largest Star Wars collection was a privilege I won't soon forget. Jason was sending me texts of items he wanted to look at in the museum, and it was so cool to see Ann just walk into the room holding this stuff.
It was weird for me too, because I'm going through one of Steve's books that has 1,000 Star Wars collectibles.
Yes.
Great book, and talk about feeling like Christmas. I thought I was going through the Sears, the old, the Wish book from back in the day, because Mac had said, "Well, pick out a few things that you want to see," and so I picked out some of those things that always kind of made me laugh or smile or whatever, plus some other things, and I couldn't believe it. It was like I no sooner sent the text, and there we were. It was right on display. We didn't throw them at all. She knew right where everything was.
Oh, yeah. That's the magic of that place, I mean, just all of these things that legendary items you may have only read about in a book like 1,000 Collectibles, which, by the way, is a great guide to what is actually in Rancho Obi-Wan. And I think that book is still available where you get books. It was just really a treat. And we reviewed the Andor trailer, too. A lot of people have been saying, when are you going to review the Andor trailer? Well, we did with Steve Sansweet himself at Rancho Obi-Wan. So you have to take a look. Maybe I'll isolate that moment and put it up on YouTube, because I've had more than a couple of people ask me about that.
Yeah.
I'm just, hey, it'd be a good idea if you listen to our last show. Maybe everything you're requesting is right there for you.
What, do you think we're going to miss that?
Yeah. Then the next thing they says, why aren't you guys on this week? I said, well, you didn't listen to last week's show. Why are you even caring about this week's show? you have a show you need to listen to. But no, I'm happy for if you spend 5 minutes with us each week, or you're here for every minute of every episode. We appreciate and love you, and really are all about the Star Wars passion that you're looking for in a Star Wars podcast. So I just want to thank everyone who's been listening to us all summer. It's been a great summer for Star Wars. Everything really kicked off my summer at ICCC.
Yeah.
That's where the summer kicked off for me. And then I drove home back into the crappy Illinois weather. That 30-degree temperature drop on the afternoon ride home was not pleasant. So I had to suffer through a little bit more of the winter conditions before.
I think you saw all the seasons on that trip from Nashville back to Chicago. All 4 seasons, right?
I saw all 4 seasons were represented, and I went through about 15 mood swings on the ride as well. So it was,
a few for each season.
But that really kicked off the summer, and then summer was solidified with Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim, which was just about one of the greatest Star Wars events I've ever attended.
Yeah.
The Mandalorian exhibit, the Kenobi premiere, just everything about that convention was so great. And also because you see so much online about how fans are angry at Star Wars.
Right.
Frustrated. And then you go there and you see 60,000 people just really being passionately excited about Star Wars and not as judgmental, and just it was just really nice. So that kind of recharged the batteries a big way. But while I was out in California, my God, I had Star Wars overload the same day that we did the live stream from Rancho Obi-Wan, which for me is something of a professional career highlight, that live stream we did. But earlier that morning, through a connection I made out there, I was able to take a tour of the former ILM facility at the Kerner buildings in San Rafael, which was really great on the heels of the ILM documentary Light and Magic, which is now streaming on Disney+. Everything from Empire through the prequels all was generated out of that facility. And, of course, so many other movies. I mean, it was really like stepping into an industrial Light and Magic time machine. And the facility is still being used to create special effects today. It's where the THX sound system was developed. It's where Edit Droid was developed. It's where the CG dinosaurs from Jurassic Park, that's where they were born. So it was, and of course, it's where the AT-ATs were originally animated by Phil Tippett. It's where Lauren Peterson had his model shop, and he built Star Destroyers up in there and TIE Fighters and everything else you could think of. And it's where the same stages where things like the speeder bike chase from Jedi was shot, and where Jabba's sail barge was blown up. Effects from Raiders, and it was just mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. So we have some highlights from that coming up pretty soon. Yeah. But Jason, you were able to sneak some Star Wars into your vacation. This comes as a surprise to me because I know Jason Swank, when he hits the beach, the second those flip-flops are on his feet, he is disconnected. He is off the grid. Ladies and gentlemen, he is disconnected as you can be from any aspects of civilization or society.
It is true, but I have one weakness, and that is my love of toys and collectibles. So
yes,
I have long suspected that my market area here in the Northeast Ohio, it's not top of the food chain when it comes to the latest and greatest merchandise hitting store shelves. In fact, I was told at one time by a Target stock boy that my local Target was sort of like the flea market of other Targets. It sort of gets the leftovers that nobody wants. So no wonder. And I hear obviously from other RFR listeners and stuff, and they say, well, you're complaining that you don't have, the latest waves of Star Wars figures and toys. No, I'm complaining that I don't have any. Like I go in and there's nothing. There's like one General Lando Black Series figure on the pegs.
You live in an action figure desert, is what they call that.
Yes, it's an absolute
desert. Yeah.
So we rented a van and we had it all packed up, the whole back of the minivan, all the way up to the top. I couldn't even see out the rear view, and we weren't going to get anything else in this van. And so we decided we were going to stay overnight on our way to South Carolina. And that first morning, we still had the van packed to the gills. I had to go out and get some breakfast. I said, "Oh, go get Starbucks." So I'm driving down the street, and I happen to see a Walmart. And I go, got a little extra time. Let's see what they got.
The gravitational pull was just too strong.
It absolutely was. Fast forward about 45 minutes later, I got like 12 action figures, like big action figures, everything. I've got WWE, I've got Universal Monsters, and of course I've got Star Wars.
Wow.
And the struggle was how I was going to get this there was no room in this van. And of course you got to save and preserve packaging, and you want to make sure that everything stays minty fresh. But I got this guy, and I'm really happy about this. This is a Black Series figure that I've been really excited about getting, and it's amazing that it took us so long to get him, but we finally did. I know Jimmy Mack will be excited about this. Check it out.
Yes,
Saw Gerrera, this deluxe Saw Gerrera. Now, what makes him deluxe? I don't know. I think just the size, because he's a little beefier. Saw's a little bigger than your average figure, but this is an incredible likeness of actor. The name just
Forrest Whitaker.
Forrest Whitaker, yeah. It's really incredible. But yeah, so if you have
restaurants and gastropubs on Jeddah are fabulous.
So I was so excited to find him. I won't even, even the ones that I've pre-ordered hasn't even shipped, but I was so excited to get him in hand. He even has the little respirator, the breathing apparatus
breather mask.
here.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool. And then I made the entire family watch episode 5 of the Icons Unearthed documentary. And it was so fascinating. My wife, she wanted to see all the other ones because she was totally riveted by the whole Marshall Lucas story. She said, "I didn't even know that George was married." He did a great job of sort of, keeping her out of the history books. But anyway, so those were 2 moments. But I do have to, real quick, I got to sort of close the loop on this action figure stand challenge that I put out to RFR listeners. So, as some of you may recall, I was frustrated by the fact that every time I would come into the Palatial RFR studios, my shelf of Black Series Star Wars figures would be toppled like dominoes. They'd all be laying, mocking me on the floor.
Mocking you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would blame everybody. I would blame the cats. I'd blame the kids. I'd blame my wife, saying, "Well, you walk really heavy upstairs, and then it rattles my figures and they fall over."
Wife weighs like 80 pounds.
So I put the call out. I said, "What are some of the suggestions out there?" And you guys did not disappoint. And I've narrowed it down to 3. I have a winner.
All right.
I've narrowed it down to 3. So we've got sort of your homegrown, we've got your economy, and then we've got kind of your higher tier. So for the budget conscious collector, Glue Dots, you can't beat them. Chris B at galacticfigures.com. He sent this suggestion. It's a fabulous website. Love the site. Love the podcast. Chris is a good friend of the show and runs one of the best Star Wars collector sites on the planet. But he suggested this. He did admit it's a little messy because these things, they get a little goopy, they get a little gummy, but they're really good for keeping your figure standing up, especially for figures that don't have peg holes. So if you're budget conscious, Glue Dots is the way to go. Another
How
one that
heavily
we
do
got,
those bond to the action figure plastic? Because that's something that I would be wary about, is using some sort of foreign sticky substance on the feet of my action figure collection.
Here's what I can confirm. I can confirm it's the same type of, it's like a rubber cement. So if you think of it like, sometimes you get that junk mail in your mailbox, and it's something that's folded and sealed, and it's kind of it's like a booger, you know. it's sticky at first, but you roll it around and it's no longer sticky. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what the glue dot is, and so it comes off the action figure very clean. But this next, which I would call homegrown, this came from an RFR listener, nice guy, Andy from North Carolina. Andy writes, Jason and Jimmy, thank you both for all the great Star Wars content you have been putting out all these years. I started listening to RFR during the pandemic and became a Patreon member last fall. Your work and love of the Star Wars fan community makes the universe seem like a much smaller place. Chut, and keep up the great work. Andy from North Carolina. Andy was in a similar position as me, but he's much smarter, much more industrious, and he started making his own. He would 3D print. Check these out. He 3D printed. Yeah, he
they
3D
have the world at
printed
their fingertips.
Yeah.
These 3D printer guys.
These guys.
Wow, little stands that kind of look like giant footprints.
Yeah, so it's kind of an oblong, sort of squished oval stand, and he gets real precise. He says, I've divided these up between 2.5 millimeter and 3 millimeter. And then he's got a hybrid. Check this out. It's a hybrid that has both sized pegs. So depending on what size peg that you need, you can use it. This is incredible. And if you're Andy and you can print these on demand, this is a great solution. And he sent me several. I don't know. I'll check to see if he has these for sale. I'm not sure, but we'll get the link up probably in the, I'll post all of this, links to this stuff in the official Rebel Force Radio Facebook group. So that's really cool. By the way, he also threw this in. Check this out, Jim. This is a custom 3D printed 6-inch scale Gonk droid. Is this beautiful or what?
It looks fabulous. It looks fabulous.
Hasbro wouldn't do anything this good if they ever get to making a Gonk droid. And then I started thinking about, you put the Gonk droid and Saw Gerrera together. I think Saw is a Gonk man. I don't see him with a flashy astromech.
No,
him.
Definitely not. Definitely
if Saw's going to have a droid following him around, it's not going to be a chrome-domed astromech. It's going to be a Gonk. Don't they fit together? Don't they look like a duo?
What a wonderful pair.
Okay, but the ultimate winner is Big Honkin' Steve. Big Honkin' Steve reached out to me, and he's like, I got the solution to your problem. Because he was having the same problem, and he found a guy online, and he's got a solution. He came up with something that's just absolutely unbelievable. This is incredible. So his website is canofbeams.com. So this is a custom solution where he has an acrylic base, but it has customizable pegs that you can put into the base. And he has 3 different sizes of peg. He's got a small, a medium, and a large. And you can actually, what you can do is you can take the, I got one right here. So you got, hold on a second. Camera just stopped. There we go. All right, so check this out. You got a clear acrylic base. It's sort of hexagonal. And he throws in packets of these little pegs that you slide in. So you can actually match the size of the peg that you need for the figure, snap it in, and you, like I say, you've got 3 different options. And this option happens to fit this Saw Gerrera figure perfectly. So he just snaps right in. It's hard to do this on camera, but I think it's a match. It's that mechanical foot that Saw's got. But check this out. There you go. Fits perfectly. Saw stands. He's not going to fall off. You can shake it. You can rattle it. no cat, no wife. No one's going to knock my figures down now. So this is definitely the winner. That website is canofbeams, BEAMS.com. Now, don't go and order a whole bunch of them right now because I got to order more from this guy. So I don't want you taking my stash, my supply. But this really, Jim, the ingenuity of collectors and fans is absolutely off the charts. You know, I remember when Steve Sansweet would say things like, we would talk to Steve and we'd say, well, what's your favorite item in the museum? And he would always come back with something that was fan-made.
Yeah.
And I would be like, wait a minute, it's not your vinyl cape Jawa? It's not your early bird pack or whatever? And I always thought that was a little curious. And now, you know, when you see things, you know, like this custom Gonk droid, it's made out of love and passion by fans, and these action figure stands and things like that, where fans take matters into their own hands. I think my favorite Star Wars items these days are fan-made things.
Fans do it best. Fans do it
no
best.
Doubt.
So, I've been loving a lot of things coming from the Star Wars fan community, including actual action figures themselves.
Right.
Which I think they outdo Hasbro. But Hasbro's been doing some good work lately. I've received a large influx of 3 3/4 inch action figures, all new. Many new ones have been coming out this summer. I've pre-ordered them, and I get most of them. Thanks for nothing, Target, again.
Yeah. Right.
But one I did get recently was this Obi-Wan Kenobi action figure, Darth Vader, The Dark Times.
Oh,
and
man.
Yeah, it's from their retro line, so it's supposed to resemble what action figures were like in the 70s. But this is Darth Vader. So they're actually improving the design that was available to us in the 70s through the mid-80s as part of the original Star Wars vintage line. And so I think that's really interesting because the old Darth Vader action figure from the 70s, let's face it, folks, really needed some help. This is the actual figure from my collection. This is the one, the very first action figure I ever got. Is this Darth Vader action figure here.
With the vinyl cape, the telescoping lightsaber.
Yeah. No codpiece.
Yep. No codpiece, no skirt.
Which is kind of awkward. And none of the undergarment robes or what have you, the underrobes. And then, of course, the telescoping lightsaber and mine with the tip busted off of it. But, I mean, this is the guy.
You still have a little bit of a nubbin on that tip, which is impressive.
Yeah, I do have a nub.
Man.
I have a nub.
Most people don't even have the nub on there. If they even have the lightsaber, like I had to use cocktail toothpicks. You know, here's what's so cool about this one that they put out for Obi-Wan is they kind of took the standpoint of, all right, what if Kenner would have continued to evolve these figures? We know with some of the, I think Empire had the first soft goods action figure. They certainly had several with Jedi, Bib Fortuna, of course, Luke, Jedi Luke. Lando had one of the best looking capes, General Lando. So what they did was, rather than, what am I saying? The Jawa had a soft goods cape, for crying out loud.
Right, and that was one of the earliest
figures. So, but what I like is that they evolved this Vader figure and said, well, what if Kenner would have still continued to make improvements and they gave him a soft goods cape?
Right.
It's a very cool idea.
Some of the best soft goods I've seen in recent history is another Kenner retro figure, the Obi-Wan from the Kenobi streaming series.
Oh, look at that.
Very nice. And look how well the cloak
look at the hood.
and the hood it fits him very well. It's very accurate.
Very tailored.
And it doesn't, in the past, these guys, their faces would get buried in the soft goods hoods and whatnot. But this one, he's ready for action.
I love that.
Then you have the new Vader figure. By the way, the card stock on this one's still kind of that flimsy Hasbro card stock that they've been using, and I've been very critical of this for over a decade. But they're actually rolling out some sturdier cardboard card backs now, and it's on the bubble and everything. But everyone knows I do not prefer that.
Oh, listen to that! Oh,
yes. just ripping it
I
right
just
off
got back from the
thing.
beach. I saw some of those otters ripping into those shells.
Yeah,
That's what
me.
Jimmy Mack is.
That's me. But I'm doing
Live
it just to show
unboxing here of a retro vintage Darth Vader figure from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. Of course, I've seen none of these on my local shows. Look at that. Look, there it is.
Now, see, they overdo the red eyes, I believe, which is something that's a very
thing,
Disney
right?
Star
that's
Wars
a new
thing.
trope.
The red eyes, that's a little overdone. But otherwise, it's a really nice action figure because it more accurately depicts Darth Vader, while it still does stay consistent with the style of the original vintage figures. It does improve things, too. The helmet appears to be a little bit smaller. But I do like the way the soft goods cape fits.
What's the lightsaber sitch there? So no telescoping saber, so it is... What's going on with the saber? Oh, and I see they've sculpted that sort of under tunic, that skirt, for lack of a better word.
That's there. And most importantly, the codpiece. But the lightsaber resembles the type of sabers you would see in vintage Kenner action figures from the Empire Strikes Back line on forward. So very similar to what you would have seen a Bespin Fatigues Luke use. So abandoning the whole telescoping saber concept, which is something that was really only in play for the first wave of Star Wars action figures in 1978. But yeah, this is a nice Vader figure, and there he is with the saber and everything. So that's worth hunting for, because it's not a repro of the old vintage style. It's a completely new sculpt while still paying honor to the old vintage style. So I dig it. I like it a lot.
Now, what do you think about, while we're talking about retro vintage, just what do you think about the news that Hasbro is releasing the next 12? That first wave that they did, which was, from A New Hope, they had Vader and Luke, Farm Boy Luke and Han and Chewie. But they're finishing so that they have, the next 8, whatever it is, the next 6, so that you have the first 12 figures finally re-released, Death Squad Commander, etc.
Yeah. It's getting to the point now where I'm starting to push back on the whole concept because I want to maintain the integrity of the collection that I saved and cherished from my childhood and kept in great condition through all these years and stuff. That's a piece of history that belongs in the 70s and 80s. And I love the idea of new vintage, the retro series.
Yeah.
They've been doing it with The Mandalorian. They've done it now with the Kenobi series and the Boba Fett series.
Right.
But to re-release the old molds, I'm starting to get over the gimmicky appeal of it and starting to actually fear for the integrity of my collection because I've saved it for so long. And I think if you want those action figures, you should go out and hunt for them via flea markets, antique shows, and collector conventions.
I'll meet you halfway. I think I don't really have that much of a problem with it, but I wish that they would focus on this stuff that Kenner never got around to doing.
Right.
When they
right.
released the snow speeder Luke, they put out the Tarkin, and as you say, some of the new media has had these waves of retro vintage figures. I love that. But I want to see a Baru and Owen in that retro vintage style. That's what I really would like as a collector. But the other thing I think about too, Jim, is there's some. I'm sure we've got several listening to the show right now that are never had the opportunity. They're younger fans, never had the opportunity to grab some of those vintage figures, and this is an opportunity for them to have a little display that pays homage to that, that era that they may be wishing they had lived through, and this is their way of kind of living through it.
I get it. I get that. But some things should just stay in the era for which they were designed for. And I feel that way with I feel like enough is enough. That's where I'm at as far as that goes.
Yeah.
I think it would be great if I took you on my tour of the ILM Kerner facility, because I did shoot video and take photos. I've been dying to share this with you, Jason. So, you have it all ready to go?
All ready to go.
Okay, so this is a collection of video and photos that I shot at the former ILM, which still has big time the stank of ILM all over it. I mean, it's virtually the same facility.
Yeah.
Special effects are still shot out of there. From what I understand of the history of this place, is that when George moved out, another special effects company put together by former ILM guys moved into the facility. Okay. So it was 2005 when Lucas moved out of the Kerner facility and into the Presidio. And the focus really became digital effects, not so much practical effects. Digital effects. So there was a team of physical and practical effects dudes who got together and formed a new company, and they called it Kerner Technologies. And they provided physical effects for movies for like 5 or 6 years. Until
now, the origin of that Kerner name, that was Kerner Optical, right? Didn't they move into because it didn't say Industrial Light and Magic outside on the
No, and the name of the street is Kerner that they're on.
Okay.
So they called it Kerner Optical primarily to maintain secrecy.
Oh, okay.
So just people walk, because you could walk right by on the sidewalk and probably hear things being blown up.
Like Jabba's sail barge?
Yeah, you hear that stuff. You're like, what's going on in there? They didn't want people to know all that was going down, keep the fans away. And they were mostly successful, mostly. But some fans did infiltrate the place, and we'll learn more about that later on. But so when George moved ILM out, physical effects guys stuck around, called it Kerner Technologies until they went bankrupt. And nowadays, a company called 3210 is in there. And they're also doing physical, practical effects for all kind of movies, even still Star Wars films like Solo and The Rise of Skywalker. So definitely still a connection going on there. We know that ILM doesn't do all the effects for Star Wars films. Some of that stuff gets sent out to boutique studios and things along those lines. So I got to go tour 3210 Studios, but it's ILM, and it's the funkiest place. You know, it was an empty warehouse, and these ILM guys are maniacs. They're geniuses, and they built all the hallways. They built everything up in there, and they did it all themselves. So it's real funky, and it has a cool deck that wraps around the place. So let's cruise through this video. Here's a sign, an old sign that was outside the model shop, which still exists and still works as a model shop. And I actually went into the model shop. If we want to, there we go. There I am in the model shop. And look, isn't it like so fortuitous that I packed an ILM t-shirt in with my luggage? Isn't that something else?
That is fortuitous.
So when I found out, hey, you want to go check out the place, I said, wait a second, let me put on my ILM shirt. So I went over there early in the morning a couple of weeks ago. So, yeah, that's the model shop. And also, you can see an X-Wing being built on the table behind me. And there I am looking very serious in the model shop. You know, I probably was breathing in some sawdust or something right before. Look at this, the birthplace of THX.
Wow.
This is the original THX theater.
There's Sean House. He was my buddy who I met out there and who gave me a tour. He's from 3210, and he has extensive experience
the original
with ILM
theater
and Star
where they
Wars.
were creating and developing one of the most influential sound design systems for film.
Oh, here I'm going into like the control area for the theater now.
You're going to run the projector?
Yeah, well, there's the THX system right there. That's the original deal.
Wow.
And it's still in place. And there I'm looking out over the theater. And the theater very much reminded me of the theater you go into at the technical building at Skywalker Ranch, the Stag Theater. It's like that, but smaller. And the sound in there is spectacular. And there's an old ILM table.
Of course, you're thinking, what was on this table?
Yeah, that thought did cross my mind. Here's some blue screen in a crate, ILM stage crate. And then here I am out onto one of the main stages. This is where they shot so many Star Wars things, most notably the speeder bike chase from Return of the Jedi. There you see a photo of it being done there as I'm standing in the same spot. Green screen instead of blue screen. They said they just painted it recently. It was blue screen just a few weeks prior. There's that ILM table again. And look up there. There's a Jurassic Park dinosaur just kind of hanging out, looking out over the proceedings there. You see that long stairwell there that goes up to a fully walkable grid right above the stage where you'll walk up there, drop down lights wherever you want. That was a lot of fun going up there, which I did do. And it was really interesting to go up that stairwell because a dude poked his head up out of the doorway that's there. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's so-and-so. He's been here since 1979. And the dude looked like he'd been there since 1979. You could see his door right up there, right on to the left of me. He just poked his head. I thought we were the only ones in there. Here we are going up the steps, and all of a sudden the dude pokes out. This is where they blew up Jabba's sail barge on the roof. Wow. Here, looking over San Rafael, California, there, right off of the 101. It's there, Kerner Optical. You can see some bridges there in the background.
There is Jabba's sail barge.
There's the guys who blew up Jabba's sail barge. A lot of cool pictures hanging up on the hallways here in the former ILM facility.
I love that they kept that stuff.
There's the guy who just poked his head out of the door when I was there. He looked like he came out, he was talking about what George wanted to do, and he looks like he hadn't even left the building since 79. Cool. Oh, there's John Knoll working on Star Trek. And that all happened there. There's the dirigible blimp, the Zeppelin from Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade.
Look at that.
Yeah, just hanging there. There's an invite to go see the world premiere of Return of the Jedi at the Coronet Theater. And the premiere of Empire Strikes Back. That might have been a cast and crew premiere at the North Point Theater. Here's a really cool ILM sign signed by, autographed by all of the legends that work there. You know, Phil Tippett, so many of the greats, John Knoll. Sure. I don't think George actually signed this, but just like all the tech people who worked on the film, of course, yeah, Phil Tippett. I don't know if Dykstra had signed this one because this is after the company moved.
Yeah, after
there's Marshall Lucas right there. Marshall Lucas.
Look at that. There it is. Marshall.
And there's just a Millennium Falcon hanging in the hallway.
Yeah, is that all?
You know, completely accurate build. It's just
no big deal.
This is a blaster that they had in an acrylic case in the hallway from one of the Star Trek films. And so that was kind of cool. Here I get some detailed shots of that. And for everyone listening to this, there's a Willow poster. You know, got a tribute to Willow. Some more shots of the Falcon being placed
R2?
on stage. R2, I believe he's being pulled out of the Dagobah swamp. And then, of course, the Imperial AT-ATs, which were all shot there on the stage. That looks like an underwater shot, like a submarine. I don't really know what that one's from, but it's pretty cool. And this is some device, a prop from a Star Trek film, some Rogue One posters, 3210 Studios.
Oh, is that
Indiana Jones gear.
Props here.
Yeah. He's got some wardrobe there, and of course
got the idol,
Vitos idol, you know, and
a Holy Grail.
And the
sweet leather
top
jacket.
of the Staff of Ra. Hey, there he is. Looks like you're coming to us from the model shop or a model shop.
Do you want me to try you back on my computer, which it might be a lot better?
That might be a good idea, actually. Take a couple minutes. No problem. There he goes. Well, I guess he's just going to leave his iPad. All right, so back to the video.
Yeah.
Here's some Harrison Ford wardrobe or stunt guy or a double maybe you've worn this. Who knows? But the Hovitos idol, the headpiece of the Staff of the Ra, and the Staff of the Ra. And there's a maquette of a X-Wing pilot. There is an artist working on the Ark of the Covenant there at ILM.
Oh, yeah.
And, there it is. You know. I think they had faces melting in those very studios.
Lots of R2s being made here. A lot of domes.
Yeah. You got the door. Oh, Robin Williams, thanks for making us laugh. It's a nice little photo. I think that was taken at the last time he worked there. And some ET bikes flying off into the sunset. Oh, and there I am having lunch at an undisclosed location immediately following the tour. It was a beautiful day. It was a beautiful day in Northern California in the Bay Area that day. And it was just such a thrill to be able to go there because you know what Star Wars history buff I am. And I mean, it's like, the Civil War buffs going to those battlefields.
Yeah, but all that's where I felt like I was. Trees and grass. I mean, you're looking at, folding tables and
crates.
Yeah.
Crates, I mean, even like the refuse there was extremely interesting to me. We walked outside, between we were at the C building and the D building, and between the two buildings is a courtyard, and they pointed it out to me and said, hey, that's where the plane from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade crashed. And, it was like dragged along, and you could see the pilot in there as he goes along. So it was just filmmaking history around every corner at Kerner.
Hey, we got someone calling in.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I wonder who that could be.
This now this might be Sean House, who was my tour host there while we were at the Kerner facility. And Sean's a guy who's a Bay Area filmmaker who does a lot of work within the filmmaking community. He's a jack of all trades when it comes to filmmaking and special effects. And there he is, Sean House, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, Sean, glad you could join us here on Rebel Force Radio. Myself, Jason Swank.
Hey, Sean.
Hey, guys. How are you?
I was just telling everyone about the tour you gave me and what a thrill it was to be there where so many great moments of movie magic was created over the years. And you're the type of guy who I can tell loves being there every second you're there.
Absolutely. I mean, this is, as I told you, this is a dream come true for me. And I've been living it every day as a co-owner now of 3210 for the past 10 and a half years. And being on the campus since 2000 is when I first started working for them.
And you have a great story about how you discovered Kerner was actually ILM and the first time you went there and how you finally got your foot in the door. You told me a great story about that. Would you be up for sharing that with our audience?
Sure. It's not too long.
That's what I do like about your stories. They get right to the point too. That's
There you go. Well, I was in the Navy, and I had always dreamed of working at Industrial Light and Magic. And short version is I had a dear friend who had a skydiving accident and lost his leg. What happened was that I started taking him to physical therapy 3 times a week. And then one day we were going through the physical therapist as he was trying to get more motion into Lupe's leg. And Lupe cried out. And at the time, Lupe was, I want to say 49 years old or 51 years old. He had been to Vietnam and everything. And he looked at me, and this is on a Friday, and he said, Sean, what's your dream? And I was like, is this the time or the place for that? He goes, well, I don't want you to answer me now, but think about it. And so over the weekend, I did think about it. And we were in the same place on Monday because Marta, his wife, had taken him on Saturday, and Sunday took off, and the physical therapist was leaning in, and his leg broke. And this happened multiple times because there was about 18 to 22 fractures right around the knee and everything like that. And so he cried out, and he had been holding onto my hand, and he nearly crushed it. And he's got tears pouring down his face. The physical therapist is apologizing. People are running over to us and everything. And Lupe looks at me and goes, so did you think about my question?
Wow.
I was like, yeah, I did, but I don't think this is either the time or the place for it. And he goes, there's never been a better time or place. He goes, what's your dream? And I said, I've always wanted to work at Industrial Light and Magic at the Model and Creature Shop. And he goes, then why don't you? I said, well, Lupe, I just put in my paperwork for another 4 years. That's 10 years in the military. I'd be an idiot to get out. He goes, you can pull your paperwork right up until the time you sign it. I was like, well, they're the best in the industry. And he goes, so what, you're going to settle for less? And I was like, well, I don't have a day of experience. And he goes, what you think by staying in the military for another 4 years, that's going to put you closer to experience in a model shop for the movie industry? And every argument every point that I made of why I couldn't do it, he shot it down. He just cut out the legs from underneath it. And 2 weeks later, I pulled my paperwork for our reenlistment. And a couple of months later, I separated active duty from the Navy after 6 years. And that was in September of 1994. And then in November of 1994, I flew up here to find a job and a place to live. And here's the thing is that ILM, of course, this is the early days of internet, if any at all. And ILM was a secret. Their phone number went to a receptionist. They had a P.O. box. And it wasn't listed anywhere as far as where they were. But I remember seeing a Walter Cronkite interview in the mid 80s. And I had gone to the library in San Diego and we scrolled through microfiche and all these things. And we found it. And in the beginning of the interview, it's this panoramic view of San Rafael. And it says, in this sleepy, idyllic town north of the Golden Gate Bridge lies one of movie making's greatest secrets. And then it panned across this sign in front of this building. It said Kerner Co. in big wooden letters. I was like, And then he walks up to the door and he said, behind this door is George Lucas's, Candyland or whatever it was. And I remember seeing on the door and I wrote it down. It said Kerner Optical Research Laboratory or Research Lab. I'm like, okay, well, let's go up to San Rafael. So I flew up here on a Friday just to get a place to live and maybe a job before I flew back down. I had 3 days to accomplish this. And I came up 101 and pulled off at the Central San Rafael exit, came back along the frontage road there because there was motels and Motel 8. So I got in there. I asked the guy, do you know where ILM is? And he goes, no. And I was like, okay. And so I went and sat on the bed. And for those of us who are old enough to remember, there's a map and there's a yellow pages and a map right in the front. And I was like, where could they hide Kerner Company or the Kerner Optical Research Lab where no one would think to look at it or even think twice about it? And then I was sitting there and I went, Kerner Street. And I looked at the map, A7, went down, Kerner Boulevard. Okay, holy crap. That's right behind the hotel here, or motel. It was Motel 8, not a hotel. And so I hopped in my rental car and I pulled down the street called Bellum Boulevard. And I was no GPS or anything like that. And I came up and I see the street sign that said Kerner Boulevard. And I was like, getting all antsy. My heart was starting to beat. And then right on the corner, I saw Yushang Sushi. And I'm like, ooh, that sounds good. And made the right-hand turn. And right away, I noticed there was a bar there. I was like, ooh, okay. I'm a bartender. This is okay. Good sign. And so I'm pulling down the street. It's dusk on a Friday evening. And my heart is starting to beat really fast. I'm like, okay, let's see if we can find this place. And all of a sudden I saw the sign that said Kerner Company. And I parked my car and waited for traffic, ran across the street, walked up, and sure enough, it had the Mylar was preventing us from seeing in. There was still enough light that it was still reflective, but it said Kerner Optical Research Lab. And I swear to God, my heart was beating out of my chest. And I cut my hands over my eyes to be able to look through the Mylar. And I jumped back because there was a big life-size Darth Vader standing right on the left-hand side. Holy crap! And I put my hands back over the eyes again, and I'm looking, and I see the big magician logo, and right next to that was the matte painting of the compass rose underneath the water outside from the sky view as they came in following Peter Pan in for Hook with Robin Williams. And I'm just like, holy crap. And then there is the matte painting of Endor with the antenna array. And I'm just like, and right at that moment, somebody tapped me on the shoulders and said, excuse me, sir, can I help you? And I'm like, this is Industrial Light and Magic. And he goes, sir, this is private property. I was like, yes, but it's Industrial Light and Magic. And he goes, sir, it is private property. If you do not have an appointment, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'm like, okay, but I'll be back and I'll know your name. I can't remember what his name is though. Anyway,
I got a job.
I think it was George. Was it George?
It was George. I wound up going down to the bar right away and made friends with the bartender who also owned the bar, Sam. And about it was a bunch of months later, I wound up getting a job there. Sam had been a paratrooper in World War II, and he liked the fact that I skydived. So I got a job at Jay Friendly's, and I immediately put into place ILM Appreciation Night on Wednesday night, and it was half off the first drink, 25% off all the rest.
Oh, that's so slick.
Wow, man.
So
brilliant.
I got to know a couple of people. This is.
They had no. Once there were free drinks or discounted drinks on the table, they had no hesitation to admit where they actually worked and the name of the place, right?
Oh, absolutely. They pull out the key card. They, hey, here we go. And all right, here you go. By the way, what's your name? What do you work? I'm computer graphics. Finally, some guy comes in. He's like, yeah, model shop. Oh, perfect. What's your name? I'm not going to say his name right now. Anyway, anyway, I got a tour about 6 months after that started of the facility. Of course, totally geeked out and everything. But the gentleman who was in charge of the model shop at that time was a gentleman named Mark Anderson. And I said, okay, how can I get a job here? He goes, well, the first part is that you're in the right place. That's always the good part. But he said that he wouldn't hire people that lived across the country, in New York or overseas or whatnot, simply because of the fact the movie industry is so cyclical and uneven. And he didn't want somebody to come out here and all of a sudden the project stops and they just moved and they don't have a job. So he didn't want to do that to people. So he said, just get experience with as many materials as possible. And he goes, and help me help you get into the local union. And it's IATSE. And it's the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. And so when you see the movies, all those people, most of those people with the credits rolling by, best boy grip, key grip, prop master, gun wrangler, they're all IATSE members of different locals throughout the United States. So I worked on getting into Local 16, and I found a book that listed all the Northern California businesses related to film, and just started cold calling and showing up on people's doorsteps going, give me a job. They're like, why do you want to work with me? I said, because you're near ILM. Somebody said, okay. And so I started building sets, and I was doing, props and all different things out of my garage and everything. And finally got into the union as an overhire. From there, one day I was at the bar and I get a call from the union hall saying, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? I said, where am I going? Okay. And he wrote it down and he's like, okay, you're going to report to 3160 Kerner Blvd. You're going to report to Mark Anderson. I'm like, are you really?
Jackpot.
Had you kept up, Sean, had you kept up with Mark at that point? Or had you lost contact with him?
I had become an absolute pest. What happened was that I asked him. I had asked him if
squeaky wheel.
Yeah, exactly. And I will tell anybody who's listening to get into the film industry, get into any industry, but the film industry in particular, persistence is the absolute key. To this day, I say that. And what happened was Mark had said, I said, can I call you back? And he said, absolutely. I said, when can I call you back? He goes, try about 2 months from now. And he goes, and if I don't call back right away, because I am busy, he goes, give me a call a month after that. And if not, then a couple of weeks. And then if not, every week. And then every day. And so I did that. And I later found out he thought I was absolutely batshit crazy. But I still because I got into the union and started building things. And I guess I was able to show him what I could do. So here I am.
Wow. I love stories like that. It's so cool because there are a lot of people out there that have dreams. And the fact that you had sort of this friend that sort of, deconstructed all of the barriers that you had put between you and your goals, who was also facing such huge obstacles in his own life. I mean, this you make movies, but it sounds like a movie. It's an incredible story.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It is. And I just I've been so blessed through my life to have a continuation of these stories. Once I achieved my goal of working here, it was like, so you just achieved your life's goal. What you going to do with the rest of it?
Now what?
Yeah, now what? What happens after ever after? Happily ever after.
And I realized that there was anything I set my mind to was going to happen.
Wow. So, I got to know, because, you have military background, and you said that, to get in the union, you had to get jobs, and you called around, and you finally started getting hired. Like, what were those first few gigs like for you? Like, did they just hand you models, or like, what was it that you were actually doing? They give you a hammer and some nails and say, go put up this wall. Like, what was it like for you?
Much the latter. It was going to scenery shops and building scenery for commercials or low budget films or whatnot. Once I would get in, like, say, on a low budget film or a music video, I would then, I'd try to get hold of the script or whatnot and say, oh, do you need anything else? You need anything specialty wise? And one of these movies was called The Sculptress. Horrible, horrible, unredeemable movie. But there was a lot of sculpting in it. So I was able to do a lot of that. And then I always was searching for something else I can do as far as being able to work on a project and show them that I could do more. And so the abilities just kept on adding up. And I was also doing it all the time in my spare time too. And by the way, we have this thing up here in Northern California called Burning Man. There's a lot of people with wild ideas. They have to get them made somehow.
I know some people who've been to Burning Man. Wow. Incredible.
So you've been working on that for a while then too, huh?
Oh yeah. That goes back a ways.
Can I just say, just to interject some music conversation into this, because that's what I do. I knew right away myself and Mr. House would be fast friends the moment I met him, because he shows up wearing a T-shirt that is the Millennium Falcon with the Grateful Dead skull and lightning bolt right in the middle of it.
Oh boy.
And I said, oh boy. He's knocking a ball out of the park on two of the reasons why I go to the Bay Area. I mean, really, the main two reasons why I go to the Bay Area, for music and Star Wars. And so for you to present yourself with such a great mashup, I since found out, now correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, but you have actually done some technical work for Mickey Hart, the percussionist from the Grateful Dead. You have.
Yes, I have. I've created several instruments for him. The most famous being the instrument called the beam. I didn't create it; it was already done. It was already created, but it had been through so many iterations. It wasn't even a coherent instrument anymore. He first developed it for a little movie by Francis Ford Coppola called Apocalypse Now. Mm-hmm. And that's when you first heard the beam instrument. And since then, several other people have developed one or two of them. And I went on to build 8 of them thus far.
Wow.
For myself.
Holy smokes. So, Jason, and for everyone listening who aren't familiar with what the beam is, it's essentially a very unique instrument. It's like a girder long piece of, I guess, metal, and they string like long piano strings across it, add pickups like guitar pickups to it, or custom made pickups, of course. And it's all mono tuned to I think the key of G. And Mickey Hart gets on stage and he reaches the deepest, bassiest tones. There's a picture of Mickey right there playing the beam, and you can see you've never seen anything like it. And the resonance, the deepness of this instrument will shake the walls of any stadium he goes into. I saw Mickey playing it for the millionth time over this past summer with Dead and Company at Wrigley Field, and he never fails to amaze and blow you away when he plays this. He's a wizard with this, and that's your beam right there, Sean, correct?
Yeah, Yes.
What? Do you take custom orders?
I have. I built one for Bill Walton, but that was at the behest of Mickey. So.
Oh, really? Bill Walton has the beam. I never knew this.
Yep.
Boy, I wonder what it's like when he pulls that thing out.
He's got a hole in his house in San Diego. He has a whole recreation of Mickey's drum kit all around him.
You're kidding me. Now, I know Walton has done some drumming. I heard he was sitting in with someone just a few years ago, maybe at Sweetwater. And Bill Walton, of course, basketball legend, tallest guy in the universe, and one of the most serious deadheads that have ever existed. He toured Egypt with the Dead, and I mean, he's accompanied them on thousands of tours. So, well, that's your. I'm glad you. Thank you, Jason, for allowing me to discuss this with Sean, because this is a piece of information this hardcore Star Wars deadhead needed to have before I met you, and I didn't get it till after I met you, and so I'm happy I'm able to finally talk to you about that, because wow. And Mickey, he's really easy to work with, isn't he? See, he's not going to answer. I've heard stories about Mickey.
I forget when you were here. I think I showed you. I do when Dead and Company do the New Year's Eve shows. I do some of their more infamous props.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Well, there was the first year that it was the year that they held the Fare Thee Well tour, and that's how I got in with these guys. Is that they held it. The rehearsals for such right across the way in C Building on Main Stage. So the same exact stage that Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher are jetting across, on blue screen on a speeder bike, was the same exact stage that all these guys got together and for a month and a half practiced for the Fare Thee Well tour. And that's how I got to know everybody. And then that winter, they had reformed already to become Dead and Company. And I get a call from Mickey. Hey, Beamster, can you build me a flying joint? And I'm like, a flying joint. He goes, yeah, it's got to be really long. It's got to seat somebody that might be, I don't know, around 7.5 feet tall. And actually it has to seat 2 people. And it's going to fly over everybody's head just before midnight. And we're going to toss rose petals and joints from it down on their heads. Sure, I can build that. Can you make it light and can you make it smoke?
Yeah, fully functional.
Sure, why not?
So you never say no, right? You never say you can't.
Never. We always say, and that's the whole beauty about this business, but especially this location, is nobody ever said no. They went yes, walked out the door and went, what did I just do?
Yeah.
Well, that's the true philosophy that has always fueled ILM and George Lucas himself. And during your ILM years, Sean, what films did you work on?
I didn't work on a lot of films at ILM, to be honest, because I was what is known as a day player. So I was doing both post-production work in the form of model making and whatnot. And then I moved on to I would do regular production work, live action for films. The Matrix, Terminators, all these different fun stuff like that. So the films that I did work on, I worked on this one set that actually appeared in 3 movies. We dressed it differently each time. I worked on AI. I worked on Planet of the Apes, Jurassic Park, Lost World. And then there was one more set that it was used for. It was like where the plane came down through the trees for Jurassic World, Jurassic Park, Lost World, and where the astronaut capsule lands in Planet of the Apes. And there was one more. I'm trying to remember what it was for. I don't know.
Yeah,
they all run together, movies. Don't they?
Mm.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They played on episode 3. Revenge of the Sith, helping do Mustafar a little bit. But other than that, I wasn't there a lot. But when it became Kerner Optical, that's when I really became almost like a regular employee.
So
as much as you can.
Explain that transition a little bit to us, because George Lucas moved ILM to the Presidio in San Francisco, across the bridge, and moved everyone out of the classic warehouses that created all of those great effects for all of those great movies, to focus more on digital effects. So, so the guys who were left behind that created the Kerner Special Effects Company in the wake of George moving everyone out, those guys were largely then practical effects wizards, right?
Yes, absolutely. Stage crew, practical effects, practical camera filming. Yes, basically the whole practical effects division was left in the Kerner campus. So George started moving everybody down to what we call LDAC, or the Letterman Digital Art Complex in the Presidio, in 2004. And he had moved the majority of the company, including Lucas Gaming, down there by 2006. And we still existed up here doing the practical effects, but there were several people that saw the writing on the wall that George was going to sell it off, much like he sold off Pixar.
Mm-hmm. So those guys all started their own company then?
That's correct. Yeah. So there was a management-led buyout, and they just picked up. Literally one day went home, next day came back, and it became Kerner Optical, and they rebuilt it and started doing movies right away.
And so then
they with Industrial Light and Magic doing practicals when ILM would either not be able to achieve it digitally or when they needed other things.
And then when did it transition into 3210?
So Kerner Optical lasted a little less than 5 years. So late 2006, and then unfortunately there was some bad decisions, and it wound up going into court-ordered bankruptcy, and so it officially closed on September 1st, 2011. And 2 days later, I grabbed a gentleman by the name of Marty Brennis and asked him if I could have a meeting over his house, which is just around the corner. And I gathered the model makers that were around and said, "Do you think there is a business here for another 5 years?" And everybody agreed that, yeah, there is a business, model and practical effects business at least for 5 more years. And I said, well, listen, we pretty much know what went wrong. Why don't we try doing it? And I put together a couple of people, and we talked to more people, and found Tim Partridge, who was actually part of Kerner just towards the end, and he wound up becoming the CEO of 3210, and then Greg Beaumont, whose dad was in camera engineering back on the original Star Wars, if I'm not mistaken, but definitely on Empire, and Greg started on Empire. And he, along with several of the other camera people, came up with the Empire Cam, both the sound speed and the high speed camera that you see in all the behind the scenes shots on Hoth. It had a really custom graphite composite case and everything like that. And then Greg also came up with the Vocam, which he had gone down to LA and bought all these old VistaVision cameras, brought them up here and converted them. And then he continues to rent those out to people like, the Dark Knight series director.
Christopher Nolan. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because Christopher Nolan still shoots in film. There's a couple of directors that do. And so then we gathered a bunch of people around us, and we repopulated the 2 buildings and continue to build stuff and blow them up and have fun in general.
Well, I just love the funkiness of the whole facility. It's very funky. And that's, of course, because ILM guys were creating rooms, offices, and hallways just on a lark sometimes, just based on an idea, not even putting plans to paper. Just build. And you even pointed out a few offices that you built throughout the building. Did you do it in the same sort of fly by the seat of your pants method that the old ILM guys did to honor the tradition?
Well, yeah.
He's like, they're going to get on me because I didn't get the right permits. But that's the ILM tradition.
It is. It is. There was the joke, especially among the model shop personnel, was that ILM didn't stand for Industrial Light and Magic. It stood for I Love Moving. And that was because the model department started right here in D building, and then it moved to Cookie Bay, which used to be Famous Amos cookie factory, and then ILM took it over, so you always had the smell of chocolate chip cookies in the air. And they moved to Hangar Bay, and then they moved across to M Bay. Then they had some stuff down at Faraway Bay. Eventually wound up in Market Bay and F building. So. Yeah, it was constant moving, and it just depending upon the project or how many projects were in at a given time, that would determine where and when things were built and how they were done.
They just show up overnight sometimes. Hey, you guys have maintained the Star Wars tradition there, working on projects as recent as Solo and The Rise of Skywalker. What can you tell us about? What can you tell us about your contributions to those films?
Well, I've been the model shop supervisor here since we started. When Kerner went down, there was an auction, and 30 years of filmmaking equipment and filmmaking history was auctioned off to whoever had the highest bid. And I spent my life savings, and I bought as much of the model shop, fabrication shop as I could. And so we put that all back, and that was my buy-in to 3210. And so, yeah, I've been spearheading almost all the projects here, except when I go out in town occasionally. And like for Rise of Skywalker, give me a second. I'm trying to remember the visual effects director that we were dealing with. Anyway, we're in a Zoom meeting, and he's like, so there's this planet that gets destroyed, not by a Death Star, but sort of kind of like, think of the same thing, and goes, but we want it to explode in such a way that nobody's ever seen before. We get that a lot. Give me something, but just make sure it doesn't look like anything else that's ever been done before. And I was like, okay, and Jeff Herron, who is our special effects coordinator and pyrotechnician, he and I were looking at each other, and we're writing notes, and he was saying that Roger Guyette. I apologize, Roger.
Yes.
On my head. And you can actually look it up online, this Kijimi destruction. And we basically blew up the planet Kijimi. And we did it in a way that hadn't been done before. Roger didn't want any of those sparks or billowing clouds of gas like you would have, with Death Stars or Alderons or anything like that. He wanted to look like a planet was actually rupturing from within and blowing apart. And so you can see through the strata and everything like that. So it was a challenge, but we did it right there on C Stage, keeping up the tradition.
Wow, that's a great story, and it is very noticeably different than the planets that would explode, like in films from the late 70s, like the Death Star or the planet Krypton in the Superman film. Yeah, that was very much sparks and stuff. Your Kijimi explosion really does look like it's the planet's going inside out, and you see it coming out, and even things like the mantle of the planet, it's you can note certain elements of that detail that goes into it. So to me, I think it's just, as a Star Wars fan, as a historian, I am just so happy that the old Kerner facility is still being used for great, groundbreaking special effects, and most notably still contributing to Star Wars as we see it on the screen.
Sean, within the industry, as the sequel trilogy was coming about, and there was a lot of talk, both inside baseball, outside baseball, about the desire for it to harken back to the originals. And a lot of that they felt was going to be achieved through practical effects. Was that something that you guys were aware of? Were you hearing rumblings about that the sequel trilogy films was going to kind of harken back to some of those older techniques? And how do you think they did at the end of the day?
Well, yes, we were very much aware of it because we were involved in discussions with Industrial Light and Magic, among other places. And the idea was that they were going to go practical. And it's very interesting to me. I mean, everybody that worked on the trilogy, they did a fantastic job, absolutely fantastic. It just reminds me of the talk before the prequels. The talk before the prequels is everything's digital. All the models are digital. All the stuff, we're filming it on digital cameras and everything like that. And I think in Phantom Menace, there was about 10 minutes of film that was actually shot on one of the first digital film cameras. Only 10 minutes. Yeah. But and yet there were more models in the Phantom Menace than were in all of the original Star Wars trilogy. And that continued throughout the prequels. And every time they kept on saying, oh, it's even more digital. How can you get more digital than all digital? I don't know. The crazy part about it was that the model shop was just screaming. It was just, there was multiple bays, building things, building spaceships, building environments, doing practical effects, explosions and everything like that. I mean, it was an enormous amount of work. And when it came around for the sequels, there was all this talk about practical, and they did do an enormous amount practically. But the thing that I felt was similar to the way that they described the prequels is that they're like, we're on a practical set. No, a set is a set. The only time it's not a set is when it's green screen. If you're on a set, it's practical. Uh-huh. You have a desk, you've got lamps, you've got speakers, you've got all.
Because they kept saying we're on practical sets. It's like, well, that's
we're on practical sets and we're using practical props. No, a prop isn't a prop unless it's practical. I mean, it was like, and they kept on throwing out this word practical. We're using practical special effects right here on set. No, on set, it's called a special effect. Afterwards, like when they're doing all the other stuff, that's when it becomes a visual effect. And the visual effects are whether they're done CG or practical or a combination of those. So they kept on throwing out this term, just like they did with the prequels. Everything's digital. No, now everything's practical. But they sort of kind of went in the digital direction. We bid a lot of things for Force Awakens, and unfortunately didn't get any of it. It was all achieved CG wise, and personally, none of my friends take offense, but it shows. It's already dating itself, and it won't stand up to the test of time like the original trilogy did.
So why? So that's interesting, and I remember hearing those statistics about the prequels and the volume of practical models and stuff that they were being made. Why is it when you see documentaries like what's airing on Disney Plus right now? Also, there's this great documentary series on Vice, Icons Unearthed, and the narrative is always that the prequels almost shut down the practical effects industry. That seems to be what they don't come out and say it, but there's implications. It's always Phil Tippett going, putting his head down in exasperation. A lot of that's creative editing, but on the ground and what you were seeing with your colleagues and people in the industry, it wasn't like that.
No, it wasn't. The truth of the matter is, in my opinion, and it's just my humble opinion here, is that George really did push the narrative for the prequels, and everybody wanted to be like George. He to use that often overused term, he had lightning in a bottle with Star Wars, everything related to it. And everybody wanted to copy on his success. And also the longevity of it. And what happened was people were like, oh, everything is going digital and the ILM is going digital. Well, ILM wasn't making any money during this period of time. George was funding it. And he purposely was channeling everything to go to digital, even though it wasn't there yet. And I think in the Disney special, he even talks about that to an extent and saying, yeah, we weren't there yet, but I just kept on pushing him further and further, knowing that eventually we would get to the point where we could achieve X or Y. And the thing is that everybody outside, needs a headline for, Variety magazine or whatnot. And so that narrative continued to steamroll. And so in a lot of ways, the prequels did hasten the demise of practical effects. And I shouldn't say demise, but it hastened the disuse of them. But, in film, all things come around. And, right now we're seeing what beautiful things are coming out of like The Mandalorian and the use of the volume. What a brilliant use of CG and LED screens. All it is an updated version of rear screen projection. It's not all it is because there's so much detail that goes into it, and just knowing camera placement, where the computer knows where the camera's pointing at any given time and everything. But now the actors are actually having something to act against. So now they want their sets without green screen elements in them. They want their props to be real. They want to look up on the screen and jump back in horror at the creature coming at them. But that's an old technique that has just been modernized. And so we're starting to see more things happen, just like The Mandalorian. Phil Tippett did a bunch of stop motion stuff for that and for Obi-Wan. We're there's a couple companies in England that are doing some things. So we're starting to see it come around again.
Yeah. We started this interview off. You had that great story about the friend of yours who was injured and gave you that sort of push that you needed to go and follow your dream of working at ILM. But I want to know when you first had that dream, and going back to like when you first saw Star Wars, or I'm assuming it was Star Wars, but what was it that happened to you as a kid that made you, that gave birth to that dream?
Well, I saw Star Wars in 1977 when I was 8 years old. And it was just it was earth-shattering. It's game-changing. I mean, this is a foreign idea to a lot of people nowadays, but when a movie is still in the movie theater a year and a half after opening, and there are still lines out the door, there's something going on, all right? I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And I probably saw, my mom would do these art shows around Long Island. I was born and raised on Long Island in New York. And we'd often go for like a weekend, and, I hate to say it, but for a 7, 8, 9-year-old boy, you don't like hanging out in a tent with a whole bunch of artists going, ooh, ah. And so, and the other thing is during the summer on Long Island, it's hot and muggy. And guess what? The theater's air conditioned. And I kept on going back and watching Star Wars. I must have seen it about 13 times in its original showing. And also actually when it was re-released just prior to Empire. And then what happened was that, I was collecting things Star Wars. As a little kid, you got all the Star Wars trading cards. And I remember specifically the Orange series came out because they kept on coming out with different series and they would color code them. And like the first one was a blue, and then it was a red, and then it was a yellow and a green. And then they came out with the Orange series. And this one card blew me away. And there was this guy with a paintbrush and a worker's smock on, and he was working on a Star Destroyer. Later on, it turns out, I found out that that's Steve Gawley, who is a friend now. I mean, all these guys are my friends. Mind-blowing. But I was like, holy crap, I can become an adult and make models and for a living? This is... and I was like, and I can do it for like movies like Star Wars and spaceships and explosions, and and I just kept on building more models. And I went down to the library when I was a kid, and we got the mailing address, which was a PO box, and I wrote letters asking for a job at ILM when I was 12 and 13, 15 years old, and everything like that. And some movie came out called Top Gun. I don't know, and I joined the Navy.
Really? Oh, okay. So you wanted to play beach volleyball with Tom Cruise?
No, that wasn't the case. Not then. No, I still wouldn't do it now. No, I was always into aviation, so that was one of my big tracks.
So the dream was sidelined, and you went off. You served the country, and but you still managed to swing back around and and make it happen. I mean, there you are, you're in the very building. I mean, does it ever get old for you? You know, as you turn corners and see things and you remember maybe some of those documentaries and you just, the history and the weight of all that, does it ever get old?
Never. We were watching the documentary and my wife finally paused it and she goes, honey, could you please STF? Because I'm trying to watch it here and you keep on going, oh, that's in the back of D building. That's where they was remade. Oh, and that's the, you know, motion control stage. And that's where the offices are now. And, you know, and she was like, okay, you watch it on your terms and I'll try to watch it as well, but not with you.
See, I want to watch it with you. I want to watch that. I want to watch the documentary with you.
And it's amazing because, as I just said about Steve Gawley, all these people that were absolute icons and heroes, they say never meet your hero. I think that's BS. I mean, these people are just absolutely incredible. And, you know, you have people like Randy Ottenberg and Kim Smith and John Goodson. Oh, they did such a wonderful job of showing Kim and John's relationship during the special. And all of those interviews were done on this campus, except for John Dykstra and George. Everything else, as far as I'm aware, was done here. And so Kim and John were right down in the model shop. Lauren was right up here. I mean, there's a perfect
Were you
one.
around, Sean, when they were shooting this?
Parts of it. Parts of it I was. The rest of the time I was off in New Orleans in the earlier part of this year doing a Amazon show, which I can't talk about any further.
All right.
Hey, do any of the old ILM alumni just pop into the studio
all the time? Yeah, all the time, and it's so wonderful. You know, John Goodson, he has a bench downstairs with us, and you know, then Michael Lynch is down here. You know, Lauren Peterson will stop in. We have people stopping in all the time, and it's just so wonderful. We have the other thing is that pre-COVID, and we're going to start doing this again. As Jimmy, I think you might have mentioned when I was getting my computer up and running, we've got the original THX theater right here.
That's right.
I mean, takes watching DVDs or streamings to a whole new level. And I mean, it is a top-notch, world-class theater. Ben Burt, who is the sound designer on Star Wars and Indiana Jones, Academy Awards, of course. The year before COVID, he had brought somebody by to tour the facility, and I was talking with him in the George Lucas Theater, and I said, "Hey Ben, I heard either somebody said this or you said this at some point, but I heard it in your voice. Swap that. That you said that this was the best sounding room that you'd ever been in." And he goes, "Oh, call me if anybody doubts that. Absolutely. This is the best sounding room I've been in the world." And his friend turned to him and goes, "But you've got Stag Theater." And
right.
He goes, "Too big." He goes, "This is the perfect size room. There's too many sound waves crossing in a place like that. There's too much sound absorption from the amount of people in Stag." And he goes, "This is the most perfect room created for sound, let alone for watching a movie."
Wow. And it's the birthplace of THX.
Yeah.
Which is, hey, when we were going up to the fully walkable grid above the stage, you had me at fully walkable grid too. I was like, when are we going up? But we're going up the steps, and all of a sudden, a dude pops up out of the doorway, and he starts talking about George wanted to do this and George that, and you pointed him out, and I can't recall the name you said for this.
Marty Brennis, Marty the Droid Brennis. Marty has been here since 1979.
Yes, I can see. And so he would come out, and what was a thrill to me is I think you mentioned that Marty had a lot to do with the development of EditDroid, which we know is the foundation for nonlinear digital editing. And as an audio engineer for the past 30 plus years, someone who started off on reel-to-reel decks, splicing blocks, razor blades, and grease pencils. Digital editing was like, wow. I mean, it was a whole new world. And so I was able to thank him. And I was so happy to have that opportunity to just give a shout out to somebody who was there at ground zero for all of that. And I just think it adds to the funkiness of your facility when you have characters like him just sort of like popping up out of like holes out in the ground and just, lay down some history on you and then just go back down there to be innovative again. So what a thrill.
Yeah. And I mean, it's amazing because you never know who you're going to bump into in the hallways, because we have multiple tenants, but many of the tenants are former alumni. And, some of them are actually retired, but they're still doing what they love by writing movies or coming up with different ideas and everything like that. They're working in their retirement because it's something that they just so absolutely love.
And of course, blowing things up really never gets old.
That I can say with absolute definity, never, ever gets old.
Now, has a Marsha Lucas ever shown up to see the old stomping grounds?
And why would you ask such a thing?
Well, because Marsha has had, sort of a reemergence, or you might say has been unearthed lately through the documentary, and I think a lot of people are discovering her for the first time, and I have heard rumors that at least one ILM event reunion that she actually did attend. Two.
Yeah. What happened was that I think it's 5 years ago now. I believe it is. We held the 40th reunion for the ILM crew of Star Wars. And George passed along his regrets and said he couldn't make it. And the party planner, because she always is, Rose Duggan, who you saw extensively in the documentary. She was like, "Oh no, what are we gonna do? We don't have George." I turned around and go, "Why didn't you call Marsha? Do you have her number?" And she goes, "Oh, I can't do that. She doesn't go to public events or anything like that." I was like, "Well, you know my story, Rose. You don't know until you ask." And I've proven that time and time again.
Right.
Next thing you know, guess who's coming?
Oh wow, that's great.
All the ILM alumni that were here, because it wasn't just, the focus was on the original Star Wars crew, but it was all of the crew from the original trilogies. And then we held the 40th for Empire last October, which again, she showed up at. That was a year late because of COVID, but hopefully this coming year we will be doing the 40th for Return of the Jedi, and hope to see a whole bunch of faces. So.
Oh, that'd be just great. Yeah. That would just be great. So you're the guy who makes it happen. You can see that, well, you said, let's just call her. I mean, the worst thing she can say is no.
Right.
You can catch a little video interview of Marsha and Dwayne Dunham, who is another editor and filmmaker who worked on the original trilogy with George. And who has a very long credit list of his own. There's a great video on Vimeo of Marsha and Dwayne reminiscing. Yes. It's a shorty, and it doesn't go quite as deep as the Vice TV Icons Unearthed, but it's just nice to hear from her.
Yes, and we held, during the reunion, we had a room where people would just go in and duck in, share memories and everything like that. And John Peters was the one who put that together from Athena Studios. And so he was interviewing and filming everybody. So you can imagine most people want, as far as the brevity of it, most people wanted to go out and party and meet the people haven't seen for a bunch of years. So, but there were tidbits because it's a whole series on Vimeo.
Yeah, I was really struck by, obviously Marsha had contributed a number of things, but to the films themselves, but that she really helped create that family atmosphere at the company, and that Absolutely. when she was no longer there, that family atmosphere tended to dissipate a little bit, and there was just tons of love and affection for her. by the staff.
Oh, absolutely. Somebody, when they were talking at the reunion, they said, Marsha, you are the heart of Star Wars.
Wow.
So.
Wow.
Some of those sentiments certainly do come across in the Icons Unearthed special. Something else that was brought up recently, I think it was on the Light and Magic on Disney Plus, that great documentary put together by Lawrence Kasdan, and where you said the interviews took place there at the Kerner facility. They talked to Phil Tippett about naming Salacious Crumb, and he said that he and ILM crew went out for beers, and they were drinking, and he said, hey, as they were leaving, he goes, hey, wait up for me. I have to tie my Salacious. And they all started laughing at him because he had a couple pitchers of beer. And that name stuck to Salacious Crumb. Well, and then George modified it into the Salacious Crumb we know. But it all started with, hey, wait up, guys. I have to tie my Salacious. And see, he's laughing. You know, Sean's laughing because he knows Phil Tippett knows I just did a deadly accurate impersonation of him right there. But I had to wonder, was that your bar, the bar that you out in?
It very well may have been. I wasn't around then.
Well,
yeah, 1983. I was 14. I don't know if they would have let me serve. They let me serve at 16 years old in New York.
I was going to say I wouldn't doubt anything if you put your mind to it, Sean. I mean, you're
right.
You're the poster child for that very idea.
Are you ready for something crazy, Jim? I don't know if I got a chance to tell you. So we're working at Kerner. This is another one of this. How is this happening to, why am I the target of this, in a good way? I get a call from the model shop supervisor at Kerner. I was actually out in town doing a TV pilot. And he said, hey, when are you done with the pilot? I said, next week. And he goes, oh, good. Hey, can you come in for an interview? And I'm like, Brian, interview? Don't I have a job there? He goes, yeah, there's this project coming through. I can't talk about it, but I think that you should really throw your hat into the ring and be interviewed. And I'm like, okay. And again, we deal with NDAs and, secrets all the time. Most of them amongst ourselves are not necessarily secret, but I was like, okay. And I called him back. I'm like, can you give me anything? And he goes, no. He goes, I can tell you it's a prop master job. I went, oh, okay. That's why I'm interviewing, because it's not a model shop job. So I came in the following week and I met this wonderful English gentleman named Nick Palmer. And we sat down, we're talking. He was talking about movies I've done. And then he was saying, well, we have this thing. It's not necessarily a whole movie, but we're going to try to do as much of it possible up here. He goes, we're just reshooting certain sequences. I went, okay. And he pulls out a binder and starts showing me these pictures. And it was quite obvious that these gentlemen were dressed in World War II Army gear. And they're by P-40 Warhawk. And all these men that were in this pictures were African Americans. And I went, what show is this? And he goes, oh, it's Red Tails. And I went, oh, okay, great. Let me know. I love World War II aviation history. And so,
especially when it's George Lucas behind it.
Well, and I didn't know at this time.
Oh, you didn't know? Oh,
no, I didn't. So a little while later, Nick showed me another picture, and he goes, George really likes this. He really likes the look of this mechanic shed right here. He really likes the busyness of it, and everything like that. I went, oh, okay, yeah, wait, George, and he goes, George Lucas. I went, oh. Yeah, we can absolutely replicate that. Absolutely, yeah.
I like the way you play it off. Like George, I think I heard of him. Yeah, I think. I think. I know that
Sure,
guy.
sure, yeah,
You
yeah.
gotta
I
act
may
like
have
you've
heard
been there before, right? When you're
Right,
in that
exactly.
business.
And then we wound up reshooting almost the entire movie up here in Northern California. It was like 2.5 years. Every couple of months, I'd get a call from Rick McCallum going, "Hey, Spunky, what are you doing next week?" I guess I'm working for you. What's going on?
Nice.
Well, hey, you bring up Rick McCallum. I got to ask because we've got this.
Wait a
so
second. Am I
much-
being filmed right now?
No, yeah. No. He is a very colorful figure and interesting character that emerges in this documentary, Icons Unearthed. And just curious, since you mentioned his name, what was your experience with Rick McCallum and with Red Tails, and what do you know of that dynamic that he and George had?
Remember a couple of minutes ago when I just played off mentioning George Lucas and went, "Oh, okay," and just continued on with the conversation.
Right.
I think I'm going to do the same here.
All right. Are you going to plead the fifth?
No,
That's okay. You can plead the
I can
fifth.
absolutely say this. Red Tails, I don't think I've had more fun and more stress at the same time on a movie ever. It is a movie that I am proudest of ever having worked on. Because we really worked hard to change it and make it as historically accurate as we were allowed to. I got along great with Rick. I got along with him fantastically. I saw what he wanted and how he wanted it, and basically he just wanted you to show up and do your job and don't surprise him, and don't surprise him in a bad way, surprise him in good ways. With what you found or quality of something that you turned out or how you managed to come in under budget. But I was one of two people that were not part of ILM that he actually flew back to Prague for some of the some of the additional reshoots we did over there. And so the relationship between George and Rick was a case study of what I don't know, but it has to be a case study somewhere. They had a very interesting relationship. Rick is probably the only person that can tell George to, go away or something else along those lines. And
interesting.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
He's portrayed as sort of a yes man for George Lucas, and on the one hand he's a yes man, on the other hand he's this bulldog, and I'm like, boy, the two things don't really add up to me. So which is it? But it sounds like again you're saying that he was just as capable of being a bulldog with George as he was anybody else.
There was I'll relate this, and hopefully you don't have to edit myself. We were in the gold room, which is where I store all the props and everything like that. And it was my first meeting with George, and for him to start reviewing everything. It was my first meeting in person. And so he was going to come by and look at the character props and everything like that. And I had the whole room set up, with stuff on shelves and everything. And him and Rick come in and everything like that. And George is looking through things. And there's a couple of comments that just sort of kind of like, what? Huh? But between George and Rick, but then George turned around and he sort of kind of like wandered away from the hero table, and he's looking at this. He's just picking up stuff off the shelves and everything like that. And he turned around and he picked up this tin that was a first aid tin during World War II. They opened like a can of sardines, and he goes, "I like this. Can you get more of these?" I said, "Sure. How many?" And Rick goes, "Hold on, I'm going to put a stop to it right there." He goes, "What you are dealing with right now is a teenage boy with billions of dollars or millions of dollars." He said millions. And he goes, "I am here to make sure he holds on to that money." And George turns around and goes, "Well, it's your money too, Rick." He goes, "Yeah, but I'm trying to make sure you're not spending it all." He goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "So from here on out, when that man over there asks you, can he have something, say you'll check on it. You ask me, and I'll tell you whether or not he can have it."
Boy, does that.
And George goes, "Oh no, I'll still ask you for things, and you better have an answer." I said, "I absolutely will." It was an interesting
situations like that need a guy like you, because I wouldn't be able to handle it. But you seem like one of those unflappable types. You just roll with it, Man, what an honor to talk to you. This has been so much fun. I would love to spend more time with you. I'm jealous that Matt got to hang out with you a bit in person there out in California. But you got great stories, and your career is still flourishing, obviously.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And like I said, open invitation to you guys. I mean, we were just talking about Salacious Crumb, and I don't know, can you see the room behind me here with all the models and everything? During Return of the Jedi was the rubber room. This was Phil Tippett's room during Jedi, and this is where they were doing all the creatures. I've got a picture of him working right here at this table that the computer's on with the Rancor sculpt, the Rancor monster sculpt.
Oh, man. So much history.
And then I have another one right here with let's see if I can get this in there.
Look at that. The DeLorean, the flying DeLorean from Back to the Future. Wow.
Yeah, Steve Gawley and Ira Keeler working on that. And as you can see, the lights in the background, and you see where the pipes go, right, just behind Ira's head.
Sure do.
The lights. Well,
there it is. That's you.
There it is. There you go. Somewhere up there. I'm Darth sign, by the red sign.
You're in the place.
Yeah,
wow.
Sean, well, you're the best. Thank you so much for the tour. Maybe we'll get Jason down there someday soon. And thank you for your service, too.
Absolutely.
We should definitely pay tribute to that. And everything you do for the Bay Area filmmaking community and Star Wars geeks like us. I mean, really, what a career.
I'm right there with you.
Absolutely. And what an inspirational story too about how it all happened. I'm so happy that we were able to have you on the show to share that.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, guys.
Sean, take care. And the website, by the way, it's 3210 Studios. So, Sean, if somebody shows up just looking through the window at 3210 Studios, you remember your roots and where you came from, and you help them get
and I send a guy out there who taps him on the shoulder.
Private property, sir. Private property.
That's awesome. Hey,
but
Sean.
Yeah, it's 3210.com. And if I can also take a quick moment to mention,
please,
all of our dear friends, Steve Sansweet and Ann Newman, and it is Saturday that they're going to have a big online fundraiser. So don't forget about that. That's coming right up around the corner. They're going to have some fun things on there.
Thank you for that plug, ranchoobi1.org. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks, Steve. There's just Sean. You got me thinking about Sansweet now. See what happens.
Thanks so much, Sean. Nice meeting you, and hopefully talk to you again soon. Take care, bud.
Right,
bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow, that was a lot of fun. I mean,
holy cow, what a great guy.
I love the fact that there's somebody there still in the business, but also appreciates the history and the heritage. A lot of times you'll get people that are in the business and they're kind of soured by it and they're not really fans anymore. But this guy is working in the business and he's still such a fan. I love that.
Oh yeah, he's got the passion for the history and the respect, most notably, and just to know that they're still in there banging away on all the craziness that was going on there in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. It still makes me feel good that facility is being used for what it's most famous for.
Something that I didn't really realize until I watched the Light and Magic documentary, and then also a little bit with the Icons Unleashed, is those early ILM guys were not film guys. They were tradesmen. They were guys that understood how materials, worked together and models were made. And yes, they grew up on, the Harryhausen King Kong and, things like that. But they weren't film guys. They were, as I say, they were tradesmen. And it's just so fascinating that they learned on the fly how to apply their trades to making movies.
Tradesmen, technicians, and just some of the most creative minds in the world. As a matter of fact, a guy like Richard Edlund, who I really didn't know too much about before these documentary series, most specifically Light and Magic. Richard Edlund, he comes off as just one of the most brilliant guys in the world. You know, when he's not building the motion control camera, he's creating the pig nose amplifier that's known by guitar players worldwide. And that's his invention. Wow. And, you know, I've played through a pig nose many times. I had no idea that there was a Star Wars connection. But,
Crazy.
You know, he's just so typical of the masterminds and geniuses that worked in the hallways of industrial light magic. And the guys who went up north with George to keep ILM going and continue to work on the original trilogy and the prequels, those guys, they believed in his vision. They were loyal to George Lucas, and I think they reaped the rewards of all of that. And we as filmmakers certainly are continuing to reap the rewards of their hard work. So hats off to ILM.
Chewie, get us out of here!
You know, I don't know if you caught it, but in that last episode of Icons on Earth, did you hear that little Jedi rock stinger that they played?
Oh, I did, yeah. That did catch
real quick, you know.
Yeah, it was just like
I'm like, oh, welcome back to Rebel Force Radio. That was
Very
cool.
good. Yeah.
But anyway, glad you all were hanging with us this week. What a lot of fun talking to Sean. 3210.com. That's the website. 3210 Studios. And also big thanks to our sponsors this week, Indeed and Backbone. Don't forget, if you'd like more Rebel Force Radio in your life, the best way to do that is through supporting us on Patreon. Patreon is a way you can get exclusive podcasts that aren't available anywhere else except through that platform. Things like RFR Q&A, the Babu Freaks, Clone Wars Declassified Remastered, the Filoni Files, archive highlights, and more. Now, I did say we were on vacation last week. That didn't stop Jimmy Mack from putting out the content on the Patreon. I know there was a Q&A, and I think there's a new Freaks freaking out over the Blues Brothers.
Yeah, we had two Q&As. We had the continuing adventures of Podcastus with our RPG game. Myself, Matt Rashid, and Tyler Page are playing the RPG. Then we had Joe Dallas join us on a recent Q&A, and he's always a lot of fun. Great RFR VIP Key West musician Joe Dallas. And Babu Freaks. Babu Freaks are back, and we're preparing for a big event this weekend. We have the Blues Brothers convention coming to town.
Oh, boy.
To Joliet, the old Joliet prison. It's more of a concert than a convention. 2 days of blues music featuring Dan Aykroyd and Jim Belushi, bringing the Blues Brothers to Joliet. And most importantly, we have Baby Belushi, Chris Sorrentino, flying into town. And we are going to party with him all weekend. Myself, the Babu Freaks, the Mack brothers. It's going to be a wild time. Christian Mocht will be there. Lots of friends of the show will be in attendance in Joliet this weekend. So if you think you might find yourself out there, be sure to track us down. We'll be with the guy who looks exactly like John Belushi and acts like him too.
Yeah, I think he made Dan Aykroyd do a double take. When he met him.
Yeah, Aykroyd stood up when he met him and said, "You look like an old friend of mine."
Well, that'll be fun. We'll have, I'm sure, stories about that next week. But yeah, being a Patreon supporter of us here at Rebel Force Radio is hugely important to us. And you do get a lot of great content and perks. You get to jump to the head of the queue when calling in on the RFR live shows, like our after shows, which we're going to have a lot of those coming up very soon. And it's just an awesome community of just some of the best and brightest Star Wars fans in the galaxy. Details at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio, or you go to the Rebel Force Radio website and you'll see the Patreon banner. Free content always available on YouTube. Just check us out, youtube.com/Rebel Force Radio. It's just it's really an archive of RFR content spanning our 15 years plus of podcast adventures, classic interviews, parodies, and of course the latest live streams and after shows, plus new full show audio released each and every week. So please like and subscribe today. We like to have some conversations with you on our socials. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. There is an official Rebel Force Radio Facebook group. You just got to answer a couple of questions just to prove that you are a listener of the show, and we'll let you in, and you can converse with other listeners and big Star Wars fans. But the best way to support us is just to keep listening. Keep listening to Rebel Force Radio. Tell your friends, tell the Star Wars fans in your life that haven't heard of this podcast, that we're streaming 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeart, TuneIn, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon, Audible, Pandora. Anywhere you can find quality podcasts, you'll find us right here at Rebel Force Radio. And you will find us right here.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Oh, yeah, please.
I just got a text from Sean House.
Okay.
And he told us that really inspirational story about how his friend and fellow serviceman Lupe inspired him to follow his dreams. Well, Sean just sent me a picture of himself and Lupe 2 weeks ago in San Diego, the first time they've seen each other in 27 years. So there's
look at that.
Lupe right there with Sean in San Diego, California. The two of them reunited. And this is the man that inspired Sean to chase his dreams. And here we are 20-something years later. And
we all need a Lupe in our life. We all need Lupe. God bless him. We'll see you next week right here on Rebel Force Radio. So good to be back with you. Take care. See you next time. For Rebel Force Radio, I'm Jason.
And I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
The Force will be with you, always.